video for chapter 2. A lot of the basic chemistry stuff we're just going to skip for this class, and I'll put some links on the Blackboard side of some videos that can help you with that. But we're going to go through the things we need to know and the things you'll be tested on for this class. So the body needs energy to function, and this energy is stored in the bonds of molecules as potential energy. Chemical reactions are going to release the energy, which makes it available to do work, and this is kinetic energy is an example of that. So metabolism is the sum of all the chemical reactions in the body. So we have catabolism is breaking down complex compounds into simpler ones. This is going to release energy. So for example, we eat food, we eat a hamburger, we break it down into small molecules, and as bonds are broken, energy is released. We try to capture that energy as ATP, but some of it is released as heat. Then anabolism is building larger, more complex molecules from smaller subunits. This requires energy, so we do this to grow, to repair cells, to make new cells, and so there's this balance of anabolism and catabolism happening all the time, and all those reactions together make up metabolism. So we need to know the effect of different things on reaction rates. So the first one is temperature. So generally, as you increase the temperature, you're going to increase the reaction rate, just because molecules are moving faster when they're hotter. But you'll get to a point where you break the enzymes, you break the hydrogen bonds in the enzymes, and then they don't work anymore. So generally, increasing temperature increases the reaction rate. We can see here, as you increase the concentration of a substrate, that's also going to increase the reaction until we run out of enzymes. That's the saturation point. pH also affects the reaction rate. Most of our enzymes work at an optimal pH of around 7. And catalysts are also going to increase the reaction rate. So they do this by lowering what's called the activation energy. So it makes it easier for that reaction to get started. That makes it go a lot faster. Next thing is water. Water is very useful. It is a solvent, meaning we can dissolve things in it. And since our blood is mostly water, we can dissolve most things in our blood. It's also a lubricant. This is nice in joints, or like there's a fluid-filled sac around your heart and your lungs that allows those to expand and contract without causing friction. Another important characteristic of water is that it changes temperature slowly, and since you're mostly water, that means you change temperature slowly as well. So this figure shows some things again that it does. It helps regulate body temperature. It is a solvent, so you can see it can dissolve things. Cushioning, it transports things. That's kind of along with the being a solvent. The lubrication. So next we're going to talk about some different types of mixtures. So a solution consists of particles of matter called the solute, and that is going to be dissolved in a substance called the solvent. That substance is usually water. Then colloids are mixtures of protein and water. So they're generally thicker than a solution. And then a suspension has large particles, so blood would be an example of a suspension because it has cells in it. To keep the body's pH within a narrow range, the body uses buffers. These are things that resist change in pH. We'll talk about them in more detail in chapter 20. Alright, now we're going to talk about some organic compounds. The 4 main ones you need to know are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates are the body's main energy source. They're the easiest energy source, the quickest. They can be classified as a monosaccharide, which would be one, so glucose is what our cells primarily use. That's just one subunit. Um, they can also be, there can be disaccharides, which would be two of these glucose molecules together, or glycogen is what's known as a polysaccharide, which would be a long chain of glucose molecules. So they're classified basically by their size. Next one is lipids. So lipids have a lot of functions. It's the best way to store energy. It's the highest concentration of energy. That's what triglycerides do. They also help with cushioning around organs and providing insulation under our skin. Steroids, including cholesterol, is the primary one. Helps provide structure to cells, helps insulate nerves. It also helps us produce vitamin D, and also cholesterol. Well, hormones like testosterone and estrogen are formed from cholesterol. And then phospholipids are important for forming the cell membrane, which we're going to talk about in more detail in the next chapter. Then we need to know the difference between saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. So at the top we can see a saturated fatty acid. Between carbon and hydrogen we just have single bonds. These are going to be solid at room temperature. These generally come from animals. Unsaturated fats have some double bonds in between the carbon molecules, so that makes them more branched, and these are going to be liquid at room temperature, and these generally come from plants. And trans fats, we'll talk about them more later, but they're not good for you. Alright, next thing you need to know is proteins. The most abundant and important organic compound in the body. They do all the work of our cells. The structure and metabolic function of every cell depends on protein. So some of their functions are strength, like keratin in our skin, structure, like most of our bones are collagen protein, defense, so our immune system makes antibodies, which are proteins. Enzymes that speed up reactions are proteins. Contraction, it's proteins in your muscles that cause contraction to happen. Hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen, which all our cells need. And also many hormones are made from proteins, and they send chemical signals throughout our body. And proteins are made up of amino acids. This is what an amino acid looks like. There are 20 amino acids. They link together to form peptides, and the function of the peptide depends on its shape, and its shape is determined by the amino acids in it. The reason the essential amino acids are essential is because they have to be obtained through the diet. Some amino acids our body can make, but we can't make these essential ones. So what is the body's primary energy source? And the correct answer is carbohydrates. Alright, next thing we need to know are the nucleic acids. DNA and RNA are nucleic acids. They consist of thousands of nucleotides. They carry genetic information, so the genetic information has instructions for making all the proteins that your cells need, and that is found in your nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. Then ATP is a nucleotide that stores energy. Here we can see when this phosphate bond is broken, it releases energy, and that allows us to do work, such as muscles contracting. And then we can reform those bonds as we take nutrients and break them down. We get energy from them, and we can reform that bond and reuse that ATP. So which statement is true? And the correct answer is D, because DNA and RNA are nucleic acids, not nucleotides. ATP is a nucleotide, not a nucleic acid. Nucleic acids are organic. If something contains carbon, it's organic. Nucleotides do consist of a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogen base.